morning, I'm Kelda Yoon. A person is dead after a fire inside an apartment building in Scarborough tonight. Emergency crews were called to the building near Warden and Finch Avenues just after 8:30. Toronto Fire said it happened on the 9th floor. Firefighters located one person dead inside a unit. They said another person suffered minor injuries, adding that the fire is now out and the search complete. It's not yet clear how the fire started. And police are searching for suspects tonight after two people were killed in an afternoon shooting in North York. The incident happening in the parking lot of a Toronto community housing complex at Jane and Driftwood, sending people running for safety and prompting nearby schools to go into lockdown. Dale Manukduk has the latest.
Shots rang out in this courtyard parking lot along Driftwood Avenue just after 2 in the afternoon.
I saw the people are running this way, so I ran to see what's going on because we were working and I was worried that something is happening. And then we saw like a dead body inside here and then I ran away.
I was terrified. I was really terrified. I didn't know how to react. I just wanted to go back home.
Toronto police and medics arrived on scene and found two victims in their 20s suffering from gunshot wounds. They tried to save their lives.
Sadly, one of those victims was pronounced deceased at the scene, while the second victim was transported to hospital via an emergency run. That individual has now been pronounced deceased, making this a double homicide.
Police say that an altercation led to the fatal shooting, but they don't know how many people were involved. They did recover two firearms, but are unsure who they belong to, whether that is the victims or perhaps the suspect or suspects.
I just know that they fled the scene. And again, we are sifting through looking for all available evidence. So that's why it's important that if there's any dash cam footage or doorbell ring camera footage or any information, that you pass that on to the police.
The community is no stranger to gun violence. In February, a pair of bus stop shootings rocked the neighborhood, taking the life of one man.
We need change. When this change is going to happen? I mean, they should the government do something because this is too much.
In response to the two shootings, police set up a command post for 3 months and increased their presence in the neighborhood.
This community is working hard. They're working hard with us. We have a very strong relationship with this community. We have our neighborhood officers assigned here, and they're on patrol every single day.
Every time I see them, I feel a bit safer, to be quite honest. I'm not sure about how everyone else feels, but for me, every time I drive in and I see them there, I feel a little bit safer.
Toronto police say in response to this latest shooting, they'll be setting up another command post for at least 48 hours. Dale Manukduk, CBC News, Toronto.
A man has been arrested for firing back at suspects during a gun battle that left two people dead and two others injured in Scarborough. The shooting happened in the Ellesmere and Midland area on July 24th. Police located 4 people suffering from gunshot wounds. A man was pronounced dead at the scene. A woman later succumbed to her injuries. Police say the 2 other victims remain in hospital with serious but non-life-threatening injuries. 25-year-old Christopher Kane is facing 9 firearms-related charges. He is expected in court next Tuesday. Police are investigating after shots were fired at a store in the Eglinton and Bathurst area for the 2nd day in a row.
I think you're seeing this practically everywhere in Toronto. I don't think this is necessarily a neighborhood thing anymore. Yeah, we always want to try to be the big New York or the Chicago, but these are sort of the prices, so I think we're playing.
Officers were called to Kalani Jewelry just after 3 this morning after occupants of a vehicle allegedly discharged a firearm at the store. Police also responded to a similar call at the same location yesterday morning. They haven't released any suspect information or a possible motive. Paramedics say no one was injured in either incident. A man is dead after an industrial accident at the Ontario Place redevelopment site. Toronto Fire saying he was crushed beneath heavy equipment this morning. Greg Ross has the details.
Toronto police have confirmed that a man was killed here this morning at Ontario Place. Emergency crews were called in just after 9:30. Fire crews who arrived here on scene reported that a large piece of machinery toppled over and that the man was crushed beneath it. There is a large cherry picker style forklift that remains at the scene and is laying on its side. It appears that they were trying to load the forklift onto the back of a flatbed truck when it fell over. The man was pronounced dead on the scene. At this point, it's not entirely clear who that man was working for. We know that there is a massive construction renovation that is happening here at Ontario Place. We reached out to Ellis Don. That is the contractor that is overseeing the work that is being done here. And in a statement, they told us that the incident here this morning is not related to the construction redevelopment of Ontario Place. CBC News has also been able to confirm that there was a television crew that was filming here on site yesterday, and we did see workers from that film crew here this morning packing up equipment. We have not been able to get official word from that production company as to whether or not the man who was killed was working for them. The Ministry of Labour has been called in to investigate. The Minister of Labour was asked about this today at Queen's Park. Here's what he had to say.
A good team of investigators. I mean, as you know, our government's taken increased steps to strengthen the Occupational Health and Safety Act. We've strengthened fines for employer bad actors. But I mean, working to prevent workplace fatalities is an all-Ontario effort. This tragically happens, and we have to learn from it as public policymakers. At this point, you know, the family deserves a thorough investigation, and that's what we're going to make sure happens here.
We also heard from a spokesperson for the Ministry of Labour who told us that an inspector has been assigned to this case and will conduct a thorough investigation of this incident. Greg Ross, CBC News, Toronto.
And the Ministry of Labour did provide a statement to CBC Toronto this evening in regards to the death. It reads, quote, following this morning's incident, 2 ministry inspectors visited the site. A worker sustained fatal injuries as a result of equipment flipping over. The employer, Matthews Equipment Limited / Herc Rentals, was issued 2 requirements. Further details are not available at this time as the investigation is ongoing. Faith leaders rallied at Queen's Park today, trying to get the Ford government to reverse its decision to close 10 safe injection sites across the province. Ali Chiasson has the story.
One of 5 consumption sites the province plans to close by March 2025 is the one Jennifer Hayer credits for helping her get back on her feet.
I don't know if I would be alive today. I am clean now for 2 years. K-Mops helped me when I needed them most after 30 years of being an addict. I am scared if the OPS closes, what will happen to me and my friends? Closing it down is going to kill a lot of people.
The province plans to move away from the model of supervised consumption, opting to build addiction recovery hubs instead. In a statement to CBC News, Health Minister Sylvia Jones doubles down. Quote, Ontarians deserve more than a healthcare system that is focused on providing people struggling with addiction with tools to use illegal drugs. And she says the so-called heart hubs would provide mental health and addiction supports, and they're ready to invest $387 million to build them.
The Heart Hub program that the government is wanting to roll out at this point is so nebulous in its details. No timelines.
Today, a cohort of faith leaders condemned the move.
The letter has been signed by 245 faith leaders in total, representing many different faith groups.
Also, on behalf of faith in general, the argument that we want to augment and we want our leaders on all sides of the aisles to hear is that we're not talking about numbers. We're speaking of people.
But the province has also heard from people in some communities who want the consumption sites gone, particularly since Carolina Hubner-Makarat was killed walking by the South Riverdale site last year, struck by a stray bullet amid gunfire between alleged drug dealers. Reverend Maggie Helwig works with Toronto's homeless and those struggling with addiction. She fears removing the option of safe consumption will do more harm than good, appealing to the Premier directly.
I'm hoping that perhaps if facts and figures and science and data have all failed, perhaps we have a chance to reach his humanity.
Ali Chiasson, CBC News, Toronto.
A woman was seriously injured after being struck by a train at the Long Branch GO station. It happened just after 8 o'clock this morning. The woman was transported by paramedics to hospital in life-threatening condition. Her injuries later downgraded to serious. The trains were delayed during the morning commute, and the investigation into how the incident happened is ongoing. In a statement to CBC Toronto, a spokesperson for Metrolinx expressed support for the victim and urged riders to stay a safe distance behind the yellow line on train platforms. Welcome back. As you may remember, Toronto was hit by a severe storm this summer, one that caused almost $1 billion in damage to homes. The major rain event and its aftermath adding even more scrutiny to City Hall's multi-billion-dollar flood prevention plans. Tonight, in the second of a three-part series, City Hall reporter Sean Jeffords looks at basement flooding across the city and what is and isn't being done to stop it from happening.
On July 16th, Toronto's Rockcliffe neighborhood was hit hard by flooding. The major storm dumped around 100 millimeters of water on parts of the city in just a few hours. And few places were soaked more than this neighborhood, which suffers from perennial flooding. Sarah McVee's home in the neighborhood flooded too, and it flooded again a month later.
The entire place had sewage backup water, so had to be completely cut and dried out.
I thought it was going to be dry today.
She's still cleaning up from the storms, with some of her belongings out in her yard. Since she bought the home in 2021, McVee has been flooded each summer. She's installed a backwater valve, a rain garden, and 2 sump pumps.
So you have the so-called gray infrastructure, and you have the green infrastructure.
Yeah.
And you're still getting hit.
Oh yeah. I can't keep it out of my house. I mean, I'm not joking when I say, should I build a cement kind of barricade? Because this whole system is pounding my house. And what ends up happening during a storm, like it did this summer, is the sewage backing up through the Toronto pipes. My 2 sump pumps are working like crazy, processing it. So I'm starting to feel like I'm a water sewage processing corner.
And Rockcliffe is far from the city's only neighborhood that suffers from chronic floods. A few kilometers to the east in Winston Park, Lunford Grant says he and his neighbors were hit hard by the July 16th flood. His home suffered thousands in damage, and this is his 3rd flood in a decade.
We're preparing for every 5 years. Because we notice it's every 5 years it comes.
Every 5 years.
Every 5 years.
You expect you're going to get it.
Yeah, when you see the rain come and in the 5-year term, you know it's going to come.
To him, the solution is clear.
Fix the infrastructure. The old infrastructure can manage the amount of water that's coming through.
And the city does have a plan for both Rockcliffe and Winston Park.
The city's basement flood protection program creates custom mitigation plans for neighborhoods. City staff estimate that to do all the work across Toronto, it'll cost $18 billion. So far, the city's done just over $1 billion of that work.
Critics of the program say when City Council created it, they imposed guidelines that keep the majority of the work on a deferred list. So about $5.5 billion of the needed work qualifies for the program. That leaves over $12 billion on the shelf, including Winston Park.
Well, people send me pictures of what their basements look like, and they look like swimming pools.
Councillor James Pasternak represents the community. The fix there would cost city taxpayers $9.5 million. But because it doesn't meet the financial guardrails, the work won't move forward.
It's not the way we run a city. We don't discount ambulance calls or fire services call because they may live in a far end of the city or further from the station. Everybody deserves city services and the protection of their homes.
The city needs to build more flood mitigation infrastructure across Toronto, this expert says.
We need money to be put towards flood control systems, dams and reservoirs, flood control structures and barriers such as dikes, berms, diversion channels, cisterns, and holding ponds. We need to complement structures by retaining and restoring natural infrastructure, wetlands, grasslands, and forested areas.
And while the residents of Winston Park wait, there has been good news for the people in Rockcliffe. The city and federal government will partner to build flood mitigation measures totaling more than $320 million. But that work and the solution are still years away. McVie says she wants help to do more now.
So I'm not going to lose hope and I'm not going to lose energy, but I do think there are things that the city can do to help us on our properties to keep their sewage and wastewater out.
Sean Jeffords, CBC News, Toronto.
Residents in Toronto's Moss Park neighborhood are raising questions about their city councillors' ties to a prominent real estate developer. Corporate donations are banned in municipal elections, but executives and employees of corporations are free to make personal donations, which can quickly add up. As Sarah McMillan reports, some say donation rules need to change.
Sergei Zernov loves living on his lush street in South Cabbagetown with historic Victorian homes. When he heard last year about a proposal for two 40-plus story apartment towers one street over, he wasn't happy.
This project, from the architectural point of view, is an abomination. It doesn't fit the environment.
Zernov and a number of other neighbors voiced their opposition through petitions and speaking at a community council meeting this summer. Zernov is concerned about impacts on traffic, shadows, and wind, while others say the high-end rentals aren't the kind of housing the neighborhood needs. But in July, rezoning and bylaw changes were passed without debate, allowing the project to go ahead.
I feel that there's been a mess up in whose voice is heard, and it's very sad to have to say that it seems like the voice of money is heard and the voice of people seems to have lost its spot.
That money from senior leaders at Fitzrovia Real Estate, the developer behind the apartment project, who made maximum campaign contributions to local city councillor Chris Moyse in the 2022 election.
Corporate donations are not allowed in municipal elections in Ontario, but nothing stops corporate leaders from making personal donations. At least 8 senior employees at Fitzrovia, including the CEO, donated $1,200 each to Chris Moyse's election campaign, though none of them lived in his ward. Now, those individual donations are totally legal, but they're raising some eyebrows and prompting questions about whether donation rules should change.
The co-founder of Democracy Watch says bans on corporate and union donations have backfired. Duff Conacher says donations tied in some way to corporations or unions are now just more difficult to track.
It's well known across Canada that a lot of municipal council candidates are funded by property developers.
In an email to CBC, Fitzrovia's CEO said any donations made by employees were made in a strictly personal capacity using their personal funds. Adrian Rocca said he donated because he believes in being active in civic politics.
I can't speak to their intention, but I can only speak to my intention.
Chris Moyse says the donations have not had any bearing on his work as city councillor.
I am not influenced by anyone. I am here to serve my community, and I do so with integrity. It's at my core who I am.
Moyse says he supports the Sherbourne Street development largely because it's rental housing, not condos, and will contribute to the mix of housing in the neighborhood.
It just doesn't look right.
Residents like Zernov, though, say there's at least the appearance of a conflict of interest.
Maybe they shouldn't accept these donations.
Conacher with Democracy Watch advocates for lowering donation limits across the board. He points to Quebec, where the limit was lowered to $100, more closely in line with what the average person can afford, and making it much harder for coordinated donations to have a real impact.
The only way to stop big money is to stop big money donations.
We asked the province if it's considering any changes to donation rules. In a statement, a spokesperson for the Minister of Municipal Affairs said the ministry reviews the municipal election process after each election. Sarah McMillan, CBC News, Toronto.
If you didn't buy a ticket last week, some good news. The largest Lotto Max jackpot prize in Canadian history is still up for grabs.
This is a definitely winning ticket, 100%, you know.
It's always a hope. You never know. It will be a life change for me, my family, everybody, you know.
Last week's $75 million draw had no winner, so the prize has been raised to $80 million. Those who want to try their luck had until 10:30 tonight to get their ticket. Now, the odds of winning, 1 in 32 million. All right, Riley Lachuk joins us now with a look at the forecast. And Riley, a beautiful sunny day, hopefully more of the same the next few days.
So, Kelda, we're looking at these warm temperatures and these above seasonal conditions really continuing as we get through the next several days. Here's a look at where we got to today through southern Ontario. 24, 26 degrees for the most part, 27 in Peterborough, 28 in Petawawa. So still quite a bit of summertime warmth to be felt across southern and southwestern Ontario. But if we widen out a bit more here, here's a look at the U.S. Midwest. Just wanted to show you some of these temperatures from the afternoon here. Bismarck, Fargo into Minneapolis into the 30s this afternoon. Much of the region really dancing around that 30 mark for the most part. So it's not just southern Ontario and that heat, really across much of the U.S. Midwest, feeling some of that heat from that high pressure ridge as well. And that will protect us from a system that is making its way up the eastern seaboard that crossed through the Carolinas, bringing some rain and some thunderstorm activity throughout the day today. So as we head into Wednesday, mainly sunny skies for the most part, a bit of thin high weather cloud once again, but really not a lot to speak of. Through the afternoon hours, there is a slim chance we could see some of this maybe producing a scattered shower through the Niagara region, but for the most part, mainly sunny skies and just some thin high weather cloud making its way through the region. Rinse and repeat for Thursday, mainly sunny skies. This dry stretch of weather continues. I don't have a lot to talk about for the next several days, at least, aside from maybe a touch of humidity, especially through the later afternoon hours, feeling closer into that 30-degree mark as we get into the next several days. Even the winds tomorrow, staying fairly light. Here's a look at some of our gusts. Yeah, not a lot to talk about. We're seeing wind gusts 5-10 kilometers an hour, so fairly calm conditions through the next several days as well. Some of your wake-up temperatures for Wednesday, your overnight lows, looking at temperatures still fairly above seasonal for this time of the year. We should be close to 11 degrees for overnight temperatures, 15 in Toronto, maybe closer to 11 or 12 closer to the water. Into southwestern Ontario, 14s and 15s overnight tonight. And we keep temperatures like that as we get into the next several days as well. So your long range looks like this. Sunny and dry are the two words that I'll use to describe the next several days. 23 closer to the water, inland closer to Mississauga, might get to 25 tomorrow afternoon. 26 for Thursday, 25 for Friday. And temperatures staying in the 20s for the weekend, Kelda. And our next best chance of some precipitation, some rain potentially coming Monday into Tuesday of next week. But that is still quite a ways off yet.
Great. Thanks so much, Riley.